Audrey Meadows and Art Carney seemed like family on television. However, after the Honeymooners left, an odd incident occurred. They didn't talk again. No calls, no get-togethers, nothing. Why? Was there a fallout? Quiet conflict? Or two stars going their separate ways? Fans were left wondering for years, since no one had a definitive response. When we created the Honeymooners, things were drastically different. We never worried about having a roof over our heads, even though we all played members of blue-collar families and money was always tight. Decades later, bits of the truth are beginning to come to light. And the true tale may surprise you. Ed Norton's wizardry. There is always that one character in a fantastic program who does more than just assist the main character, they steal the show. That was Art Carney's character Ed Norton, on The Honeymooners. Since Jackie Gleason's loud, blustery Ralph Cramden was the focal point of the show, Norton wasn't meant to be the main character. Norton's quirky charm and unconventional timing, however, were what repeatedly caused spectators to burst out laughing. The problem is that Carney made it appear natural. On paper, Ed Norton was a Brooklyn sewer worker. You know, a blue-collar man. However, in Carney's portrayal of him, Norton was also fanciful, innocent, and slightly eccentric. He was simply easily sidetracked. He wasn't stupid. Ralph might be boiling impatiently next to him as he stares at a faucet and pretends to lead an orchestra. Carney was never hurried. He extended the moment till you couldn't contain your laughter by letting each beat play out. It was the reason Norton was so remarkable. Carney's physical humor came naturally to him. Not quite slapstick, but a little more nuanced. With perfect timing, he might tiptoe like a cartoon character, gesture with exaggerated elegance, or look blankly. Half the joke was in his body language. He didn't have to say anything at all. The home could collapse with a single bewildered look. Carney, however, offered Norton depth as well. Beneath all that eccentricity was a faithful companion. Norton was there, patient, and always willing to assist regardless of how many times Ralph blew up or yelled commands. The character was genuine because of that warmth. It grounded him and demonstrated his heart, despite his ability to deliver a joke, and it's challenging to maintain that balance. Week after week, however, Carney did it. The irony is that Gleason was aware of Carney's value. Despite being the headliner, Gleason was able to spot genuine artistic brilliance. Everyone adored how they played off one another like longtime lovers, and their on-screen chemistry was like lightning in a bottle. And Norton was the one who frequently shone in those situations. The moment where Ralph begs Norton to assist him in writing a letter of complaint is among the most well-known examples. Ralph makes a sincere effort to dictate, but Norton uses his previous typing class lessons to begin the letter with, "Dear Sir or Madam, enclosed please find." Norton just sits there blinking, unsure of what he did wrong, while Ralph loses it. Carney's performance in the moment is flawless, despite its simplicity. People have an insatiable appetite for him. Fans always missed the real Norton, even when Gleason brought the Honeymooners back with new cast members in subsequent years. No one else was able to convey the combination of heart and silliness that Carney had made the part so memorable. Furthermore, Carney never took advantage of it. He had no intention of outshining anyone. So he didn't steal the show or make too many jokes. He simply knew the cadence of humor. He was aware of when to respond, when to halt, and when to give a situation time to develop. It's uncommon to have such humorous intelligence. However, we all adored and couldn't get enough of him before he became the well-known comedian. Carney experienced hardships and turning points that shaped his identity. And the tale of those formative years may surprise you. Trauma, injury, early life, and conflict. Art Carney was a modest child from Mount Vernon, New York, before he became famous and played the iconic part of Ed Norton. He was the youngest of 6 brothers when he was born in 1918. During the latter stages of World War I, he was raised in an Irish-American working-class household. Things weren't always easy, but they weren't terrible either. His father made a career selling newspapers. Carney was not the type of child who sought attention. He was actually shy. At home, he enjoyed imitating voices and characters, but he seldom ever flaunted it in public. He didn't begin performing impressions for amusement until high school. He quickly became the go-to person for voices and gags as his classmates realized how talented he was. He would eventually get a radio position thanks to that talent, but even in that role, he preferred working behind a microphone to in front of an audience. But when everything happened, he was just beginning his career. Art Carney, then 25 years old, was drafted into the U.S. military in 1943. Army in WWF. He served as an infantryman after being dispatched to Europe. The conflict was cruel. Days after D-Day, Carney participated in the Battle of Normandy, where a mortar round severely damaged his leg during one of the sorties. He had to be dragged off the battlefield after taking a severe beating. It was a rather significant injury. A metal plate had to be inserted into his broken leg by medical professionals. He walked with a limp after that, which he tried his hardest to conceal during his professional career. He occasionally used a cane off-camera, although most people were unaware of it on film. He had developed a style of movement that was appropriate for the part, particularly when comedy was used. He went back to the stage and radio after the war. He promptly resumed his radio work. He frequently appeared on Gangbusters, The Big Story, and Casey, Crime Photographer, where his versatility in tone and voice kept him in high demand. But it was his meeting with Jackie Gleason that led to his most significant collaboration. In 1951, Carney and Gleason were cast in a sketch on the Cavalcade of Stars show, and they clicked right away. The audiences adored their natural working rhythm. Carney's portrayal of Ed Norton became one of the most adored in television history, and that skit would later develop into The Honeymooners. The Honeymooners phenomena. Nobody anticipated that The Honeymooners, which debuted on television in 1955, would have such a profound impact. Despite only running for 30 episodes in a single season, it went on to become one of the most popular sitcoms ever. It featured excellent characters, clever writing, and a cast that knew how to collaborate, without the use of elaborate sets or special effects. Ed Norton and Ralph Kramden were at the heart of it all. Ralph, the boisterous, chatty bus driver with lofty aspirations and a short fuse, was portrayed by Jackie Gleason. Ed, played by Art Carney, was the amiable sewer worker who was always glad to be there but never appeared to truly get what was happening. When combined, they were hilarious gold. Although Carney had excellent timing, he never made an effort to take center stage. He had a perfect sense of when to talk and when to stop. That added to the humor of Gleason's rants. There was a unique and genuine chemistry between Carney and Gleason. Despite Gleason's volatile nature, Carney maintained composure and agility. Like two men who had known each other for ages, their back and forth felt effortless. That is the reason the show was so successful. Even when there was little story development, it was plenty to watch them converse or quarrel. Joyce Randolph played Norton's wife Trixie, while Audrey Meadows played Alice, Ralph's wife. The men's untamed drive was sharply balanced by them. Alice's fast comebacks and eye rolls contributed to the show's authenticity. People identified with those individuals, and the entire concept was straightforward but realistic. The Honeymooners never truly disappeared, despite only having one season. For decades, people continued to giggle at reruns. Ed Norton, Carney's character, became one of television's most memorable sidekicks, and he earned an Emmy for his performance. He gave appeal to being strange. Fans weren't prepared for certain things though, considering how close-knit the show appeared to be. The actors parted ways once it was over. Carney withdrew, but Gleason continued to be the center of attention. People eventually started to question the ties between the cast, particularly those between Carney and Meadows. What transpired when the cameras stopped filming, even though they appeared to be so close on screen? Has he not spoken to Audrey Meadows since? As Ed Norton and Alice Kramden, on The Honeymooners, Art Carney and Audrey Meadows made millions of people laugh. Despite not being a couple on the program, they had a natural chemistry and were a part of a beloved television family in America. Despite Jackie Gleason's unpredictability, Carney and Meadows provided harmony and a subtle sort of enchantment. Years later, fans learned that Carney and Meadows allegedly lost contact after the performance concluded. People's eyebrows went up. Is it possible? After the curtain fell, did Alice Kramden and Ed Norton never speak again? There are no reports of disagreements, conflicts or stress during production that are available to the public. The contrary appears to be true, if anything. Meadows and Carney collaborated well on the set, masterfully and gracefully navigating Gleason's improvised style. Professionals, both of them arrived, gave their all, and left the audience wanting more. Nevertheless, their bond appeared to wane off stage and beyond the performance. There aren't many pictures of them together in later years or interviews with Janira O. Carney and Meadows' relationship remained mostly unsaid, although Joyce Randolph, the fourth major cast member, would occasionally discuss the dynamics of the group. However, why the quiet? Some people think that was simply the era and not personal. Television was different in the 1950s, and celebrities didn't always make lifelong relationships. People either moved on to the next show once a show ended, or completely avoided the spotlight, as Carney did for extended periods of time. Despite its notoriety, The Honeymooners was only one aspect of his life. He was a private man. The Jackie Gleason factor is another. Gleason was known to be erratic and occasionally domineering, and he was known to run a tight ship. It's possible that the cast's connection during the show's creation was more based on shared experiences than enduring friendship. Off-screen, Gleason didn't have a close relationship with his co-stars. It's possible that everyone else was affected by the distance. The personality of Carney should also be taken into account. He rarely appeared on chat shows or reunions since he didn't like being in the spotlight. Even if he had loved Meadows very much, he might not have been inclined to stay in touch on a regular basis given his disinterest in nostalgia tours and the numerous personal struggles he faced. Because despite his ability to make others laugh, he struggled. And his true being outside of the screen was shaped by those challenges. His struggle with stage anxiety and addiction. Carney may have made millions of people laugh in his role as Ed Norton, but few people ever saw the guy who was carrying such enormous responsibilities. Despite the happiness he offered to others, Carney was frequently engaged in conflicts unrelated to cameras or scripts. His battle with alcohol and his protracted battle with stage fright were two of the most significant. It wasn't that he started drinking excessively, it most likely started socially, like many things in show business. Over time, however, alcohol became more of a crutch than a solace, as pressure increased and success brought with it its own unique loneliness. Few people were aware of Carney's struggles because he was a private man, but it was visible to those who knew him. His conduct both on and off the set reflected it. He never caused trouble or lost his temper in public, but the melancholy was there. Carney wasn't one of those actors who thrives on spotlight. It's possible to argue that he was happiest when the spotlight was slightly less intense. He didn't have to take center stage or be the loudest person in the room. He was Jackie Gleason's ideal companion in part because of this. Carney counterbalanced Gleason's loudness, bravado and dominant nature with charm, wit and sensitivity. However, there were drawbacks to being the more reserved member of the pair. Carney didn't always feel at ease receiving praise or recognition. A form of anxiety also developed as a result of the pain, particularly before to-live performances. For seasoned pros, stage fright is not a common topic of conversation. You would think that someone with a lengthy career and an Emmy would not experience anxiety prior to a performance. Carney, however, did. It was ingrained in his bones. He occasionally froze up before going on stage, whether it was for a sitcom, a Broadway production, or simply a guest appearance. He used to get physically ill before shows, according to friends. He would have extreme nerves to the point where he began to wonder why he continued to do it. In an interview he once stated, "I loved acting, but it scared the hell out of me." Since most actors wore masks in those days, it was uncommon for someone to be that honest. However, Carney didn't always act in that way. He would withdraw, postpone appearances, and simply withdraw within himself when he was having difficulties. Additionally, the wine was there to calm the nerves when they were too loud. He relied on drink to get through for years. His relationships, career and health were all impacted by his drinking. He grew more difficult to reach both physically and emotionally, and his marriage failed. And it was difficult to bear that darkness by yourself for someone who had illuminated so many others. The alcohol finally caught up with him. He was forced to abandon projects and even decline positions. He wasted years of his life to the fog of addiction. Although many well-known persons have that narrative, Carney's did not stop there. After battling his addiction and undergoing therapy, he quickly started to recover. Even though it was difficult at the time due to the culture, he acknowledged that he had a problem. In the 1960s and 1970s, celebrities were less likely to discuss addiction than they are today. Carney nevertheless took the steps. He reconnected with friends he had pushed away and worked on his health. Above all, he made an effort to forgive himself. He eventually returned to the work, but this time he brought a fresh perspective. You could sense the life behind the characters he played in his later roles, which bore more weight. Carney's stage nervousness, however, never really went away, and that might have been a good thing. Perhaps he was reminded of the stakes by that tense tension, and how much he wanted to do it correctly. He once claimed that his terror kept him honest, and that he felt the need to prove himself again each time he appeared in public. He would later defeat well-regarded performers and win a coveted award as a result of his self-proving abilities. The Oscar that took everyone by surprise. Many people experienced a double take when Art Carney won the 1975 Academy Award for Best Actor. No one anticipated it, not because he didn't deserve it. There were many well-known contestants for Best Actor that year. Dustin Hoffman was nominated for Lenny, and Al Pacino for The Godfather Part 2. Heavy hitters like Jack Nicholson and Albert Finney were present. Carney, who is primarily known as Ed Norton from The Honeymooners, came next. Nominated for Harry and Tonto, a short film. The majority hadn't even noticed it. The movie followed Harry Coombs, a 70-year-old retired teacher who is forced out of his apartment in New York. He gathers his belongings, takes his cat Tonto, and sets out across America as he has nowhere else to go. That's all. Nothing slightly thrilling. No courtroom drama, no explosions. When everything familiar is gone, it's just a man trying to figure out what's left of life. But Carney's contribution to the post was unique. He didn't shout or flaunt himself, nor was he acting like a huge personality. He was simply Harry, kind, truthful, somewhat melancholy, and somewhat humorous. You didn't realize you were observing an actor. You thought this was a real dad attempting to get back in touch with his children while carrying a suitcase and a cat, find new meaning in the time he had left and reconcile with the past. And it struck people. The majority of people thought Pacino or Nicholson would win on Oscar night. Carney wasn't really putting much effort into his campaign. He was 55 at the time, but was made to appear over 20 years older in the movie. Carney actually didn't believe he would prevail. He was taken aback himself. However, the audience was as astounded when his name was called, and then got up to cheer. It was more than just a victory for Tonto and Harry. It was a victory for an alternative performance style that did not rely on dramatic or lengthy speeches. Carney demonstrated that honesty, passion, and nuance may be just as important as intensity, and it was enlightening for those who knew him only as the silly Brooklyn sewage guy. It demonstrated Carney's range. He had always done so. Simply put, he had never been assigned enough roles to demonstrate it. Even though Carney himself never sought attention, that Oscar altered Hollywood's perception of him. He didn't start a showy second act with it. As usual, he remained quiet, selective, and largely out of the spotlight. Family, redemption, and love. Carney's life was far dirtier and more complicated off-camera than anyone could have imagined. He struggled with relationships, family, and even himself, despite all the jokes and smiles. He did, however, receive a lot of affection and second chances throughout this time. Carney was married to 2 women 3 times, but his relationship with Jean Myers, his first and third wives, is the narrative that most sticks out. In 1940, they were married for the first time. They have 3 children together, a daughter named Eileen, and 2 sons named Brian and Paul. Like many couples, they experienced highs and lows. Their marriage was strained by the demands of Carney's acting career as well as his struggles with anxiety and alcohol. When things became difficult, they got divorced in 1965. Wasn't just any ex. Even after they broke up, she had played a significant role in his life, and their relationship was obviously still genuine. When Carney and Jean reconciled and wedded in 1980, it took many by surprise. 15 years separate them. It's not often that you hear about a couple splitting up and then reconciling later. There was no drama or glitz in their second marriage. It was easy and seemed like a genuine opportunity to start over. Carney had left the bright lights of Hollywood by that point. He no longer desired notoriety or prominent assignments. All he needed was tranquility, which Jean provided. Together they resided in Connecticut, far from the bustle and where he was free to be himself without feeling obligated to perform. For each of them, this second opportunity served as a sort of atonement. It demonstrated that people could forgive and move on to something greater, even after years of suffering and errors. Because most people only knew Carney as the star he once was, or as his on-screen persona, they never saw his softer side. He didn't have a flawless relationship with his children either. Carney was frequently preoccupied with his job, and occasionally his difficulties made being a father difficult. Brian, Paul and Eileen have discussed how difficult the gap between them was, and how their father wasn't always present. However, they also claim that he genuinely loved them, and made an effort to patch things up when he could. Carney valued family in spite of everything. It served as his compass in a noisy and uncertain environment. Even though he didn't become as well known as his father, his son Brian entered the entertainment industry as a writer and director. Carney's struggles with anxiety and alcohol consumed his personal life. He battled these problems for years, which made it more difficult for him to relate to those around him. Despite his talent as a comedian, he experienced genuine suffering away from the stage. Throughout his career, he struggled with stage fright and anxiousness, which occasionally caused him to distance himself from friends and family. Carney's story is heartwarming. Nevertheless, because he never gave up on family and love in spite of everything, he eventually found Jean again, and the two of them created a life away from the spotlight. Even though it was silent and not widely recognized, that is also a sort of victory. The years of complete disengagement. Carney gradually disappeared into a shell of his own making after decades in the spotlight. His work grew increasingly irregular by the middle of the 1980s. A TV movie here, a little part there. Then one day, he completely ceased appearing on film. Nobody fussed too much. However, it seemed odd to those who had grown up watching him that someone who had previously made millions of people laugh should disappear without saying anything. Undoubtedly, some of it was intentional. Carney had never appeared completely at ease in the limelight. He kept his private life private even while he was at the top of his game. He wasn't looking for press. He did not attend every party in Hollywood. After finishing the task, he left for home. And he made the decision to permanently remain at home when the work no longer seemed worth the trouble. According to all accounts, he virtually completely withdrew from public life in his senior year. He seldom ever appeared in public, and never gave interviews. Carney would just respond that he no longer needed it when questioned why he didn't act more. He felt satisfied that he had done everything he could, and that it was time to end things, though undoubtedly not out of resentment. The intriguing thing is that Carney had the opportunity to profit. He had the option of writing a memoir, going on talk shows, or even landing one final high-profile movie part. However, he didn't. More than anything else, that decision appeared to capture his true self. A man happy to live in peace after years of commotion, not someone seeking fame or legacy. Though he may have been at peace, the industry never really accorded him the farewell he deserved, so there's something both admirable and a little sad about that. No significant homage or lifetime achievement award was given. He simply vanished in silence, as though no one knew how to deal with someone who refused to be honored. According to those closest to him, the withdrawal had nothing to do with remorse or bitterness. After years of commotion, it was more about keeping his quiet. Carney had battled personal issues like stage fright, anxiety, and drinking for a large portion of his career. Even when the cameras weren't filming, he was a touch tense all the time. Perhaps by moving away, he was able to find some measure of peace. And there's the health issue. Carney apparently experienced several medical difficulties as he grew older, but he never disclosed them to the public. He struggled with old wounds from World War II, and smoked for many years. It would be reasonable to believe that his decision to take a back seat was influenced by his health, death and the last years. Art Carney never truly left people's thoughts, even removing himself from the spotlight. The Honeymooners continued to air on television, and for many it remained the iconic program of a unique era. People never forgot Carney, even though he didn't seek celebrity or make an effort to remain in the spotlight. He was always Ed Norton to many, the humorous devoted sidekick who contributed to the show's lasting impact. Carney lived in peace and quiet in Westbrook, Connecticut. In his senior years, he could simply appreciate the small things in life in this serene location close to the seaside. He and Jean, his third wife, lived there and led a quiet life. Their house was free of gossip mags and flashing cameras, simple everyday days spent away from the commotion. Carney wasn't entirely absent from public events in the 1990s, but he didn't attend many of them. He occasionally came to see old acquaintances or to promote causes close to his heart. He made a brief appearance in the 1994 film Last Action Hero. Although it wasn't a significant element, it served as a reminder of the warmth he could convey with a simple glance or a few words. However, Art Carney was largely forgotten by the early 2000s. Many followers were shocked to learn that he had died peacefully in his sleep on November 9, 2003, at the age of 85. Some people were unaware that he was still alive. He passed away in a Chester, Connecticut, assisted living facility from natural causes. No lavish ceremony or Hollywood tribute was held to bid them farewell. Rather, the old episodes of the Honeymooners were on TV, along with a few obituaries and statements from friends. Years before, in 1987, Jackie Gleason, who portrayed Ralph Cramden, had passed away. The actress that portrayed Alice Cramden, Audrey Meadows, died in 1996. A significant portion of TV history appeared to end with Carney's passing. The final prominent cast member of the television series, still alive, Joyce Randolph, later spoke about Carney's generosity and how much she loved working with him, describing him as a pleasure to work with. What do you think about the subject? After the Honeymooners were over, did Carney truly refuse to talk to Audrey Meadows? Was it just the nature of friendships in show business, or was it a personal falling out? If anything, what do you believe transpired behind the scenes to keep them apart for so long? Post your responses in the space provided below. Remember to subscribe to the channel and like the video. We appreciate your time, and if you like this video, please click the next one that appears on your screen.